Welcome to the Weaponized Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt.
And my name's Ryan Hewitt.
And today's topic is
emotional availability
versus
emotional
vulnerability.
Okay. So why do you want to talk about that?
Well, I think it's been a conversation that's been coming up with mostly, I think, a lot of the single people trying to educate us about what's going on out in the single world. And
single women.
Yes. Asking us our thoughts on like this statement of, I want an emotionally available man. And
how many times have you heard that?
A lot, but
usually you hear it from a more mature woman. So someone who's probably in their 30s, 40s and beyond, right? You're not going to hear that from like someone who's a teenager or in their 20s, right?
Yeah. And typically from someone that's like on a new relation, like looking for a new relationship, like been in a relationship in the past.
Right. Once you've seen that, like, you know, muscles and money is not everything.
That's very concise. No, but this conversation, how this organically happened in the kitchen yesterday between Ryan and I, where we had this conversation because we were talking to some friends of ours, and you asked one of the women in our group, what are you?
Well, like, no, she kept saying, I need, like, there's no
How do I find an emotionally available man? I think is how she kept saying it.
Yeah. I heard it a bunch of times. I was like, listen,
not just from her, from other people.
Yeah. I was like, what is your definition of an emotionally available man?
And when you asked that, I was like, shit, that's a good question, because even when someone says that, like, I don't really know what that means. And I'm a female.
Exactly. So this is yet another mystery and confusion for men of like, what the fuck do you want me to do? Like,
what does that mean?
You want me to cry in front of you? Do you want me to watch chick flicks? Do you want me to, like, you know, get a puppy? Right. Yeah. So this is what I'm saying, but like, well, what does it mean? You can't define it. So how do you expect a guy to be able to fulfill that expectation? Yeah. So, well, anyway, so we think we've come up with a distinction that is important. I think that when women say that they want an emotionally available man, what they really mean is they want a man who is willing to be vulnerable. I think it just comes down to that, is what I've discovered. Mostly because it's really hard for a lot of men to be vulnerable and like authentically vulnerable, not just like, hey, you know, in 6th grade, I shit my pants at school, and it was like my most embarrassing moment. What?
Although that is a good question for people.
I think like what a woman wants is a guy that's going to be able to not just have a surface level. You hear this like surface level relationship where it's just like, it's transactional. It is like, you know, light, fun. Talk about the weather, talk about sports, talk about your favorite color.
Small talk.
So deeper than small talk, which usually involves like, what are your deepest desires? What are your, like, you know, thoughts that keep you up at night? You know, what is the hardest thing you've ever experienced? Those types of conversations that usually lead to feelings, right?
Or you having to not only know what your feelings are, but actually know how to start to be able to talk about them as a male.
Yeah, which is difficult because most men have been taught to not be emotional, and also like not necessarily ignore their feelings, but to just like shut off their feelings, like suck it up, move on, like don't be a baby, don't be a little bitch, those types of things. You know, and I think society conditions that because, you know, the masculine role, or males, or especially I think when you're young, you experience that in sports too, where if you like, because it's hard when you're a young man, like it's difficult to distinguish between like physical pain and emotional pain. It's just all just sort of like feels like pain. So if you're taught to like suck it up and like, are you hurt or are you injured? Like if you're not injured and you're just hurt, like get on the field, get back on the ice, like suck it up, stand up, get to the bench. And then if you think that pain is pain, right? And it's like, well, I should just like ignore this pain, stuff this pain, like, you know, rub some dirt on this pain and
put a Band-Aid on.
Yeah, but
get back out on the ice.
I think an interesting thing that happens to most men is like these things come back up in your 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
I like to make the
And
analogy
they
of
really
like,
come up when you're either A, trying to date someone, or B, when you are married.
well, this is what
This
happens.
is how this conversation.
Well, this
got
is what
started.
happens. Like, you think you're perfect in a lot of ways. Like, hey, you know, I've been able to make money. I can, you know, I have discipline. I'm successful. I can flirt with girls. I can, you know, get them to sleep with me. I can get one to have, you know, I can have a relationship with somebody. But it, over time, eventually your scars are going to show up. Your triggers are going to show up. Your scars are going to show up. Your insecurities are going to show up. All the things that you dislike about yourself are going to show up. And that's what happens in marriage. And a lot of people interpret that as like, I married the wrong person, or, you know, this person is not for me, or they're just not listening to me, or it's their fault. Right. So rather than,
you go into blame and victim.
yeah, so you victimize yourself, which is what I did this for a long time. You know, you would trigger me, or you would say something, or you would point something out, or you would, what I would interpret as like a nag or a criticism or like a put down or a rejection. And in fact, these were all just like signals and signs of ways that my insecurities were showing up, whether it was through like my reactions, my reactivity, right? Reactivity, anger, and whatnot. But the whole point of this is like, women don't want a guy who's emotional, right? In other words, like, a lot of men's go-to emotion is anger. That's right under the surface, especially if you have like unresolved shit, triggers and shit. And like, if you say you want an emotional guy, it's like, if you're an unstable emotional guy, you're either angry or you're like depressed or anxious. And women,
Can I say something here?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, women don't want a guy who doesn't have control of his emotions.
I was going to say, so the anger is a big one.
Yeah.
And because a masculine male at his core, they have anger as an emotion. The question is what do they do with that anger, and can they control it? Because, for example, I'll give you both like a contrast. Someone does something to your daughter. You're going to be angry. As a female, I want you to be angry. But even in your rage, I want you to be able to be masculine with that emotion, present with that emotion, and be able to control it. Because nothing's worse than a male with uncontrolled anger that's misdirected. Right. Right? Because if someone did something to your kid and you retaliated right away without thought, there's a chance that you make the situation worse. Or
like, if you act like this to other people, like, are you going to act like this at home? Are you going to act like this towards me one day?
Yep. So, and that your kid's also modeling you. So there's a place for every emotion in the human psyche. There's a place. I do believe that there's a meaning behind the emotion, but the emotion has to be, it is, how do you work with it? Not so much even how do you control it, how do you work with it? So I think that's what you're saying just right now, like, that's more emotional vulnerability, is acknowledging that you're going to have these emotions, these negative emotions, and you're also going to have these positive emotions. How do you work with both of them? Or do you stuff them? Do you avoid them? Do you dismiss them? What's your normal pattern? And when I think, what I hear when people say emotional availability is they want access. They want to see that you can access and, like I said, use those emotions, both the good and the bad.
So I'm gonna say something about this, and I might be wrong about this, but I think I'm right based on my own experience. I think that a guy is unable to be emotionally available if they have not dealt with their own emotions. In other words, if they've ever felt their feelings, in other words, like, and you don't have to do this in public. I'm saying, like, if you've never felt your rage, if you've never like let it wash over you, if you've never felt your extreme sadness, if you've never like grieved, if you have something to grieve about, if you have not like processed, you know, deep forgiveness and like whatever, all these like hatred and like anger and rage and guilt and shame and all these things, like, those are all normal, natural human feelings. And if you're in the habit of just stuffing these away, and if you never felt them all those years where these feelings came up, it will show up, and it's going to show up in the worst places. In other words, it's going to show up in your marriage, and it's going to show up in your parenting, because these are the people you spend the most time with. And God has designed this unit for you to put up a mirror for you, to trigger you on purpose, to show you, here's how you need to grow. And if you're unwilling to acknowledge those things, right? So this is where like you have to figure out how to, feel those feelings, process the feelings, which is difficult to explain to somebody, because I think processing a feeling is like, you have to allow yourself to feel it.
Yes.
You can't just like you can't talk about it. This is an actual like physical experience you have to have, right? Mostly in private. Sometimes you have it, and sometimes it comes up, if you're speaking to somebody, maybe this comes up in therapy for some people, or talking to your wife, or maybe to one of your best friends, or, if you're allowing your emotions to process, then you can then feel them, let them wash over you, and then you can put them to bed. And then it allows you to experience those things. It's just like anything else. Once you have enough experience with something, you can understand it, right? And then you can recognize when you become triggered, for example, with, let's say it's anger. And then at a certain point, when you recognize it, you felt it, you can then transmute is, I think, the word that comes to mind, where it's like you're using these feelings that you think they were negative because they would come out as reactivity, or like even violence or anger, like in ways that you're ashamed of afterwards, usually. You can then control them, and you can transmute them into positive things in your life. They all of a sudden become your fuel. And like, I've been able to do this with physical fitness very well. And I've been able to figure out how to do this in business. But it took me a long, long time to figure out how to do this in my relationships. And I think like a lot of men have problems with that, because they think being emotional is weak. And the paradox is, women don't want a man who is like so stoic, or they think they're stoic because they don't feel their feelings. Because a woman wants a guy
can't feel you.
A woman wants a guy who's felt their feelings, because once they've felt their feelings and they know what it feels like, and they can actually describe it after they know what it's felt like, they can communicate it. And that energy, women can feel that, right? Your kids will feel that. Your clients will feel that. Your friends will feel it. And that's what women are seeking. That's that, emotional vulnerability they actually want when they say they want emotional availability.
Yeah. I think you said in the conversation, how you said it concisely was, a woman wants a man to be able to share his heart so she can share hers. And I was like, oh, remember I said, ooh, that's what we're going to talk about today. Because that is a whole level. Like, we've been talking about this for last couple months about like creating safety in your relationship, right? And when I hear the word emotional availability, I know exactly what you're saying, of like, a woman doesn't want a man that's like coming home crying, I had a bad day today, I need you to hug me.
Like a toddler.
That even when I hear emotional availability, that's what I think about first, right? Like, that's the word, how it comes to me.
This is what men think about.
Because I see it as a toddler type reaction, right? Which every single one of us has that inner child, right? And when you were really challenged with your reactivity, one of the things, which we laugh about it now, but I don't know where I got this. I don't know if it was because I became a mom, but when you would throw your tantrums, I would literally visualize you as a 10-year-old boy throwing a tantrum. And it would break my state enough that I would start to laugh. Like, I would get quiet and I would kind of laugh inside. I wouldn't laugh at you.
I don't think I've seen you laugh at me.
But then, do you remember a couple of times where I mirrored it back to you? I showed you what it looked like in my vision. Do you remember when I was like, like, I was like, I don't want that. You're not right. I want to play with that toy. You know what I mean? Like, and you were like, what are you doing? And I was like, that's how I see you right now. And then you started to get more in touch with some of those feelings that were unresolved from your childhood. And it was only then that you started to really start to work with your reactivity. And like same thing, just like I said with anger, it has a purpose too, right? So reactivity has a purpose. Think about it as like, hey, you're driving on the highway and you're about to get in an accident. You sense it. Your reaction time is critical to helping you at that moment, right? But that same reaction time is not a good place.
Like in the car today.
Yes.
Oh my God. What are you doing?
Oh my God. Don't let me lose my train of thought by that. But your reactivity in that moment is helping you. And a lot of these negative emotions that we all have them at times, are there they have a purpose, right? But the purpose of growing you is also too, is like, can you learn how to work with this emotion? And I want to come back to the concept of the mirror, of like your spouse or your significant other is holding up a mirror. That's why you chose them as a partner. But this is all, and you said this in this same conversation. You talked about how, like, at the very beginning, you're first dating, you're showing up in all the right ways, is what you said. Like
you're putting your best foot forward.
You're putting your best foot.
You're going to like put on your nicest clothes. You're going to put on your best cologne. You're going to brush your hair and your teeth. And not that you don't, I still don't do that, but you're going to show up as your best version of yourself.
Right. And then what starts to happen though, especially when it's not reciprocated or appreciated, is that your relationship becomes transactional. If you give me this, I'll give you that. If you do this for me, I'll do this for you. And it's not like that's the conversation. It's just what starts happening, right? Because you're at like level 1 of marriage, right? And there's infinite levels that you can take your marriage. And so then you go from the first dating to like now, where you are able to have conversations where you are able to now, what happens is I'm struggling on the flipping of the iceberg, right? Can you kind of share that story?
You've already talked about this in the past.
I know, but I can talk about it again. Is there any rules that I can't talk about it
No,
again?
but it's the analogy of like marriage being like an iceberg, and like the tip of the iceberg is what you show the person at first. But if you spend enough time together and you get married and you start a life together, eventually the iceberg will start to flip over and you'll see all of the bullshit underneath. Regardless.
And it'll trigger the fuck out of you.
Usually.
Because it's a mirror, and a mirror reflects back. And like, remember I shared that song with you the other day. The universe reflects who you are, right? And the challenge in marriage, in any relationship, is that when someone starts holding up the mirror, you have to decide, when you're looking at the reflection in the mirror, you have to decide, am I going to change from this side so I see a different reflection?
Give me an example for people that don't really understand what that means. Like your spouse holding up a mirror for you. Give me an example.
Okay. Like when you, you're going to laugh at the example I'm going to pick right now, but I'm going to go for it. It's like one of the things that Ryan would always make fun of me is like, he would be like, this became a running joke that I'm not a closer, which I rejected, right? Because when I hear not a closer, I hear like you suck at sales, which is not true for me. Okay. So, but one of the things that is funny is that like, he would be like, you just start so many projects, you never finish anything. And he was right. But at one point in our marriage, I would literally like leave all the cabinet doors. Ryan could always know where I was in the kitchen or if I was cooking. Cause it's like every dish we own is on the counter. Every bottle is open. It looks like a hurricane went through. Like that's exactly how it looks. And I used to get so pissed at him and be like, can you focus on the fact that I just made you dinner and not the fact on how I got there? Like the process we're in when we're getting there. And that was when you started holding up the mirror, showing me just like how dysfunctional I was, like how much of a project I was making everything for myself, when I could just learn how to pick up as I go.
Clean as you go.
Right?
Yeah, but and that's the thing is like, you're not willing to receive that reflection unless you've humbled yourself and you're willing to listen and to accept responsibility for You know, the
Right.
potential of that being true.
So what happens when originally started happen, it sounds so like silly as an example, but what would happen is I would be like, my story would become from this loop of he can never focus on anything right. And I never do anything right. And like, so it's like my story would become, I would go right from that loop to, why the fuck does he want to be married to me?
Yeah.
Because we were in, like I said,
that's healthy.
transactional relationship because like, and I was feeling unappreciated because here I made this meal and all he can focus on is not the meal, but the process that it took me to get there. But then in you holding up that mirror, I started to look at like, holy shit, look at all of like this mess I'm creating that actually, if I didn't create this mess, I wouldn't have to clean up.
Yeah. And how does
if I could learn to clean as I go.
How does that show up in the rest of your life?
And that carries over. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of things that I'm doing that are I'm making it into a bigger project than it has to be. Or there's a lot of things I'm doing that I actually don't need to be doing. Like I could A, pay someone else to do, B, ask someone else to do that doesn't need to be paid. And like divide and conquer. Like, hey, I'll make the meal, but you do the cleanup.
Mhm.
You know, like, and
Yeah. So I'll give an example how it showed up for me. So, and a lot of people will relate to this, is that, you know, for me, like you weren't showing up sexually like I wanted you to.
yeah.
And like you weren't present. You know, we didn't feel connected. It was like,
It was a duty.
It was a duty. It was a checkbox.
Checkbox, yeah.
So not only wasn't it happening not as often as I would like, but when it did happen, it was like, well, it was just like, get it over with sex. And like, of course, if you're in the place of like, well, my wife is just not attracted to me. My wife's not that into me. My wife isn't like sexually turned on because she's like, I don't know, maybe she likes other women. I don't know.
Oh my God, you said that to me once, remember? And remember how mad I got when you said that?
Yeah. So, but these are the stories that I cook up in my head, none of them with which pointed the fingers at me.
Yeah.
So, and this is what shattered my story. All the stories, it shattered all of them.
Wait, what did the story become before you shattered it?
That you weren't attracted to me.
Yeah. So
Let me
mine was
finish.
you, I married the wrong person. You're
Yeah.
married to the wrong person. Yours was you're not attracted to me.
Right. So, and the way that mirror reflected back at me was like, well, you're not showing up for her like she needs you to be, to create safety for her to have great sex with you, which took me for fucking ever to like, what
does at times.
What does that mean? How do I do that properly? I don't know how to do that. Like, what is like, I'm doing all the right things. I thought I'm working my ass off. I'm like staying fit and healthy. Like I'm doing all the things I thought I needed to do. But again, so this comes back to the emotional safety, right? Which I think is behind a lot of affairs, and it's behind a lot of divorce. And
I agree.
in ways that like men are not creating emotional safety for their wife, and their wife is, you know, creating stories about their husband that they're like not there enough. They're not, you know, whatever the stories are. I don't know. I mean, this definitely it always is like takes two to tango type of thing. And both people have to be willing to like, you know, agree that's like, we want this to work. How can we make this work? And then you put the problem in front of you and be like, how do we work on this problem? And then you both do your own work in order to do that problem. And for me, it was all about this topic we open up today, which is like, how can you become emotionally available and emotionally stable for this household, for me to feel like I can fucking relax and like open my legs for you. That's the way I think, but that's the way most men think.
That's the way most men think.
Well, I mean, listen, it's the way that men feel most connected to their wives. Like you, as much as you
men are simple and women are not.
As much as you reject the notion that like the way that men feel emotionally, physically, and spiritually connected to their wife is when you're having intense intimacy, sexual intimacy. That's like top of the world.
Yeah. And women's intensity is different.
I know.
Their intense intimacy that they crave. And I'm not saying that there's not like that we don't crave physical intimacy either. What we also crave is, when it ultimately comes down to, is a woman wants to feel her man.
Right.
Okay.
Especially
And
for like long term.
yes. And a man and a woman wants to be seen by her man. So for the woman, what they are valuing is being seen. And when I say being seen, let me define what that is, because that's also a nebulous term. Can you see the authentic version of me?
Can you love the authentic version?
Can you love that authentic version of me? And even more higher level is, can you love the authentic core, but the evolving version that I want to become?
Yeah, scars and all.
Scars, flaws, and all. And
yeah, and what men need is they need to feel respected by their wife, right? And wanted. Like all men desire to be desired by their wife, respected and desired. That is like, all they really want.
And part of the desire that leads to the physical desire is the intimate emotional desire.
Yes, which is why we talk all about this. Exactly.
Yes. And so, but now we've talked a lot about what emotional availability is and isn't. Tell us what emotional vulnerability is on your side, because I think this was, like I said, really good how you worded it from the male perspective.
Emotional vulnerability?
Yes.
Well, I talked about what like emotional availability like is not a good word to tell a guy, because immediately that brings up thoughts of like, oh, I just need to be, I need to go to chick flicks with you. I need to like
watch rom-coms.
Yeah, watch rom-coms and like, I don't know, cry when you have, intimate, sad moments or whatever. It's like it's not that. Like emotional vulnerability is feeling safe enough with the person who means the most to you. You're willing to share like your like deepest, darkest truth, right? Whether it's like, whether it's like your most intimate desires, whether it's like, what you truly want in life, some of the things that make you feel vulnerable, or things that make you feel like sharing your insecurities, essentially.
Yeah,
like,
I was going to say sharing your wounds.
It's sharing your wounds,
without being afraid of getting salt poured in it.
Right. And this is why women need to like make sure that they make their man feel safe to share that stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're not like this, but there's a lot of women out there that are like, I've seen videos of like women making fun of their guy, for like being sad about something. Like there's a famous video out there of like this guy, he's got this spool of wire and he's sitting there. He's probably in his like 50s. He's got this spool of wire and it's like almost gone. And he's sitting there and his wife's like videoing. He's like, "What are you doing, Bob?" or whatever. And he's like, "I'm just sitting here thinking like this wire, like was a huge like ball of wire.
Like a snowball.
Yeah. Like 20 years ago, I was like, this is just like my life. And like, there's only so much left." And she started laughing at him and he's just like, "Fuck you." And he walked off. It was like the saddest video, because I was like, oh my God, that guy, he was
moment.
Just going to be vulnerable with his wife, sharing about like, wow, I'm like in my 50s. Like if you look at, the life in weeks, like you only have 400 weeks. What is it? 4,000 weeks. And if you look at it objectively, it's like, holy shit, like I'm already past, I'm more than halfway done my life if I only live to 87, for example. So just sharing things that like make your heart open, like things that when you tell somebody, like it starts to get you emotional, right? Whether it's like memories of things that made you happy, or people who made the most impact on you, or I don't know, just even sharing vulnerable things that you think about your wife, right? Like when telling them how beautiful they looked and you think about this moment you had with them recently, like it's stuff like that.
Well, I think what's coming in for me is that like even what they covered in church the other day, and it's so ironic that they covered this, and it was, I want to say this.
It's just sharing truth. It's just truth.
It's like sharing the words that matter.
And it's truth. Sharing your truth.
Yes. And yeah, not bullshitting. But the reason, let me digress on the words that matter. How they shared it in church was, we're in Acts 20. So Acts is, Paul leaving the disciples. that he's discipled, knowing he's not going to see them again. So it's his last words. And part of the theme of going through Acts has been about, in his last words, that people won't remember your last words, but they'll remember how you lived your life. But if you think about it, we are in a very rare scenario that I can share this part of it. This is how it hit me in church the other day. As a child, I lost my dad very unexpectedly. I was 12 years old. And then in 2020, Ryan's mom did what's called MAID. She's Canadian, so they have this thing called MAID in Canada. It stands for medically assisted induced suicide. Because she had a brain tumor.
Euthanasia, yeah.
And I thought about it when he was saying this, about if you knew you had this moment to have this last conversation, you wouldn't fucking waste your time. You wouldn't have your phone in your fucking hand while you shared these words. You would put the phone down.
Or you wouldn't be talking about the Patriots.
You wouldn't be talking about the Patriots losing the Super Bowl. You would be talking about what is the one thing I want to say to you. And I just thought about how wild it is that I did not get that chance with my father, but that you did. And I remember our last phone call with her. And there's so few people that probably have ever had that opportunity to know they're going to have last words. And that person's actually going to be able to hear them, right? Because there's a lot of people that know, like, if they're in hospice and they're dying and they're going to have this opportunity to have last words, but you don't know, usually by the time they're in hospice, you don't know if they can hear you, which I do believe most people can, right? So the point of me saying is that, like, emotional vulnerability too is like cutting to the core. What are the words that fucking matter?
And just being unafraid to share them.
And being unafraid to share them. And that's what emotional vulnerability from a male that I want is, can I be safe to say what I really, really mean? And I think that's just something really, really, it's easier said than done.
It's the hardest thing that people will ever do. There's people out there that would rather run a marathon than tell their father that they love them.
You used to be that person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I know what that feels like. Yeah.
Yeah. You would rather go to Navy SEAL training camp than actually sit in a conversation with me and me tell you what I need you to change.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah.
I had to break myself first. Yeah. But you don't have to break yourself.
You don't have to do that.
To do that. You could literally just gather up the courage and start practicing it. It doesn't happen in one take or one conversation or one sentence. It happens with practice.
Yeah. And it's like, even I saw a post on social the other day and I saved it. And it was so ironic because I saved it like probably the day before we went to church. And it was a post of this guy's dog, and it was an old golden retriever. Like, you know, when like a golden retriever gets really old and they just have like the gray beard, and had this mallard duck toy that was definitely like on its last leg, right? And the post was about being present. And he talked about how that his kids came over for dinner and they're all sitting on the phone and they all ignored the dog who's on his last leg.
Making this really sad.
Right? No, but it was so powerful because I was like, holy shit. If you think about it, even there's something that allows people to access like an animal dying, because animals don't have words. People do. Right? And the guy said to his family, he's like, I want you to all put down your fucking phones, and we're going to go around this table and we're going to look at all of the chairs and all of that used to be filled with people that are no longer sitting here with us. And I want us to have a conversation about what are the last words you would say to that person since they're no longer here. And then he's like, and then I want each one of you to go pat the freaking dog and play with his mallard duck toy.
Yeah.
And get off those freaking phones and look me in the face and don't talk to me about sports or the weather or all of these things that fill gaps but don't speak to voids. And I was like, that's what we need more of.
Yeah. In Warrior Week, one of the evolutions we did was we went to a graveyard. And
I did that one too.
So we all went to a different grave, and it was just like, whichever one speaks to you, just sit there and like and he gave us a couple of questions to ask, and we wrote in our journals. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was along that line of like, what is something that like, really matters that you have not, you've failed to communicate or say that you really want to share from your heart. And it just like, it gave you the perspective of like, I was sitting in front of a grave. I remember it was like a 20-year-old kid that died. I was like, wow, like this kid never got to like live his life. He never got to, have all those experiences that you take for granted over time of like, going to college and then getting a job or starting a business and getting married and having children. You never got to experience that. And just taking things into perspective, and it just gave you just a sense of like awe and gratitude. And it allowed you to access, I think, something deeper inside you that otherwise you're just like, you're living surface and shut off when you're always in just like go and reactionary all day. Right. And right now we live in a time where it's so easy to stay there with distraction, especially with phones, with TVs, and just like busyness.
Yeah. And it's all good. You're going to probably laugh that I'm going to actually, no, you're not going to laugh. You're not going to laugh at this.
Okay.
But this is how I'm going to close it. We live north of Boston, and we live on the coast. So there's a lot of fishing, commercial fishermen. And near us is this town that's very near, close to me. It's called Gloucester. And there recently was just 2 weeks ago, I think it's been now, there was a ship of fishermen, and they did not do a Mayday call, and they found one body. The ship sunk. It's very clear. And it was 0 degrees the day that they were out. So the chances of any of them surviving were very small. And this thing has gripped me in such a way that I can't stop looking. And like, even the other night I was like on ChatGPT, like being like trying to figure out like what could possibly have happened, because they haven't recovered the ship nor the bodies. And one of the girls on there was a scientist, not a fisherman, a scientist who loved the sea. It was her first job. She's 22 years old. The boat is called the Lily Jean. And I don't know if it was because it's my daughter's name, but I realized that this fisherman also named his boat after his daughter. And it's going to make me cry. And I have no idea why I'm sharing this, but I do know why I'm sharing this. So the other day, they had his funeral, and the family shared about how the boat is named after his daughter. And it felt so heavy for me to think about how his kids, watched him. He was very well known in this community. It's a very close-knit community. And that he was swallowed by the sea. The very thing he loved, like the contrast of that. And there is this, if you're familiar with Gloucester, in the port of Gloucester, there is a fisherman statue, and it's a fisherman at the helm of what's it called?
Steering wheel?
No, it has a word.
I don't know. It's a steering wheel. It's like a boat steering wheel.
The captain's wheel.
Stern.
I don't know. And as a kid, I remember always going there, and actually this statue is how we would tell you how you got around Gloucester. There was no street names in Gloucester. It was always like, take a left at the fishing statue and take a right at the fishing statue, or where the fishing statue is. And I've never noticed it, but now there's people that have put flowers and everything in looking for this boat, and it's become a huge memorial. And underneath the thing, it says those that have been swallowed by the sea. And then there's this whole saying underneath it that, like I said, I've never noticed before. And I've been reading all the tributes of these people that, like I said, they have no closure. And I think that's what's gripping me the most, is that they have no closure. And it's just brought to really, for me, full circle again of like, if it was the last time that you knew you were going to see someone, you would speak so differently to that person. And just to really, really make your words freaking matter. Because none of us know when that day is. And by you starting to make shifts, meaning people in a relationship, you are giving yourself the choice of a possibility of something, instead of being pain averse by the things that just drive you nuts about your partner. And it is so easy to focus on the things that you don't like about your significant other. But again, turning the mirror on yourself of like, hey, what are the things in me that this person's showing me that I actually have the power to change? And what would be my first step in doing so? And that to me is how you really become emotionally vulnerable, where it's a superpower instead of something that is a weakness, which I feel like more like emotional availability to me is a more of a weakness. And I could see how as a male, it's more perceived as a weakness versus vulnerability. The difference between, and I said this is like with emotional vulnerability, that's the oak tree, immovable in the storm. You will bend, you might lose some leaves, you might lose some branches, but you're still rooted. And there's a difference between that relationship, not with just your significant other, with anyone. When you are rooted, when you are grounded, then there is a difference with emotional availability is that toddler, where it's like the toddler is out and it needs your help to cope because it can't regulate itself. And I want to be with the emotionally vulnerable man, this version of you, not the emotionally available man, which is like I said, is the toddler throwing the tantrum. And that's the difference to me on this concept.
Well, that's the work. And I think I'll say one last thing. And this has been on my heart for some time now, that I think that the way that men need to become emotionally mature, and they need to become emotionally available to the people that matter in their lives, they need a men's group in order to help hold them to a standard. And that standard is to help call them out, because it can't just be your wife calling you out, because that doesn't go well in a lot of cases. But if you have real men that you surround yourself with, they're going to be the ones holding up the mirror for you, not your wife all the time, because your wife doesn't want to hold up the mirror to you anymore. Maybe in some occasions, but I think when you evolve to a level where it's like, all right, my wife is tired of holding up the mirror, I don't want her to do that anymore. Now I need a group of men that are willing to hold me to a standard, to hold up the mirror for me when I'm not holding up my end of the bargain, when I'm starting to drift, right? When I'm starting to waver or wobble, right? Whether it's with my commitments to my family, commitments to myself and my health, commitments to my business and my, focus on what I need to do to XYZ, whatever it is, right? And that takes a special group of men that you can be emotionally vulnerable with, right? Or emotionally available to, in order for you to grow. But that's how you grow for your family. I think men inherently need that tribe of other men. I think that's a big missing component in a lot of, men's lives who want strong marriages.
Yeah. And I think in this conversation, I just wanted to hit on one other thing that we covered when we had this originally, because I shocked you. Do you remember what I said when I shocked you?
With what?
I was like, that's fucking hot. Remember? And you're like, I've never heard you say that before. What did I say?
I heard you say that about the Norwegian skier, the Norwegian triple gold medalist.
No.
Cross country skier with the beautiful head of hair.
But what
did
I say? Is I was saying watching a man be emotionally vulnerable is fucking hot. Remember, that's what I said. And because I was talking about this experience where you were with a group of men and I was with a group of women, and we were talking about how we were in awe and of some of the conversation you shared with us, because it wasn't your drinking buddy conversation.
No.
Right? Like it was on such a deeper level, and you were showing us this picture of this male that's rooted. All of you were showing us this totally different masculine character that we don't see in everyday life, and in a good way. And I was like, it was so attractive. But then, like, if you show me the emotionally available person or unstable person, the toddler who needs me to be their mother and teach them coping strategies, that's not fucking attractive.
That's the contrast. It's emotionally unstable versus emotionally available. That's a way better way to say it.
Yeah. Sorry, it took us a while to dance around that, but we got there.
Anyways, so I think this is a good place to close.
Yeah.
So
go for it.
So yeah.
That's your close?
Well,
wow.
I don't know how we
You are not a closer.
Fuck you, a closer.
No,
I am a closer.
You're not a closer of podcasts. Do you want me to close it?
No. So, well, I think we can close with this. We can close with women want an emotionally available man, not an emotionally unstable man. And if you are emotionally unstable,
emotionally vulnerable,
whatever, you need to work.
Now we have to get our words.
You need to work on that shit if you want your marriage to grow. So, and I think it's just like as simple as that. And that starts with just sharing your truth with one another.
Yeah. And like I said, and it gives you, the woman, freedom to do the same.
Right. So,
and if she feels like her heart is felt and seen, and she feels like she can feel you, then your level of intimacy is going to go, not only just physical, but like emotional intimacy is going to drastically change course.
All right. Well, you just wrapped it up then. So we got to go pack for Vegas.
Yeah.
Big trip coming up. We'll share that on our next podcast.
Oh, will we?
Maybe.
As always, if you like the show, please, please, please share it with someone who might benefit from
who will benefit
from our conversation. We love getting feedback. We are shocked every week at some of the people that are telling us they're listening and actually getting something out of it, but we'll still keep doing it. And as always,
like, share, subscribe,
rate, review, and subscribe.
We'll see you next time.